Good Shabbos again, everyone, and welcome. It's a pleasure to now introduce you to our speaker this evening, Chief Warrant Officer 2, Jay Smith. Jay joined the Marines in 1997. In 1998, he attended the School of Infantry and was assigned to a reconnaissance battalion. In 1999, he deployed with the 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit on a routine patrol of the Western Pacific. During this deployment, he participated in Operation Southern Watch, along with humanitarian and non-combatant evacuation operations on the island of East Timor. Upon his return, he was assigned to the embassy in Pretoria, Republic of South Africa. In 2001, he was assigned to the embassy in Santiago, Chile. And he returned to the United States in 2003. It was immediately deployed to Kuwait, waiting orders to cross the border into Iraq. He spent the next several years back and forth between Iraq, Afghanistan, and the United States. In 2014, he received accompanied orders in Okinawa, Japan. And while living with his family in Japan, he participated in several multinational exercises and conducted multiple missions to countries of interest in the region. He retired from the Marine Corps. Just a reminder, please turn off your cell phones. While living with his family in Japan, he participated in several multinational exercises and conducted multiple missions to countries of interest in the region. He retired from the Marine Corps effective January 1st, 2018, after 20 years of service to our country. Jay is a member of our congregation, and it's an honor to have him and his wife Angela and his daughter Nava, along with his mother-in-law Sonia, here this evening. Please welcome Chief Warrant Officer 2, Jay Smith.
Thank you, Rabbi Matthew Mazel Tov. So, during a Shabbat luncheon in August, Rabbi Strauss asked if I'd be willing to talk about being a Jewish service member during our Veteran Shabbat. My initial gut instinct was to say, no, but thank you. However, the words that came out of my mouth were, sure, I'd be happy to. Thank you for the opportunity. Choices, choices. So here I stand. A short bit about me. I spent 20 years in the Marine Corps. I spent time in the reconnaissance world and was also a chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and explosives defense officer. It is a mouthful. Around 15 years of that time was spent in what are called fighting units. I spent a total of around 10 years deployed to hostile countries. So what was it like being Jewish and in the Marines? In a word, complicated. In a few more words, the most fun I hope to never have again. Hopefully, you'll be able to catch a glimpse through my eyes this evening. Did anti-Semitism exist? Perhaps. In my estimation, around 90% of the incidents that I had encountered chalk up to flat-out ignorance. Case in point, I was newly assigned to a unit, and we just deployed to Iraq in 2003 to cross the border. Tensions and anxiety were high as we knew the order to breach was coming. However, we didn't know what lay on the other side of the berm. Some of the younger Marines were gathered around and telling jokes to lighten the mood. I'm sure you know where this is going. The Jew joke started and became increasingly crass. Without a word, I strode off and went and grabbed my kippah and talit, donned both, and came back around the side of the vehicle in plain view of the platoon of Marines under my charge. With a bit of colorful language, I asked if they had any more jokes to tell. I asked the Black and Hispanic Marines if they had reported me for an equal opportunity violation had I told similar jokes disparaging their skin color or heritage. They all swallowed hard, nodded, to which I replied, how are my beliefs any different? Any reason I shouldn't report this? And then I turned on my heel and walked away. That ended it. What's kind of fascinating about it is that those same Marines became almost zealous in shutting down any further bigotry. The real anti-Semitism that I experienced came from higher-ranking, supposedly more educated Marines. Here's an example. I was at one point on a meritorious promotion board and being examined or questioned to determine whether I was to be promoted far ahead of the standard time frame for promotion to the next rank. One of the questions that was asked of me was how my Jewish faith would impact my ability to achieve mission success in a predominantly Islamic country. I looked at the individual, addressed them by rank and last name, and calmly replied, are you asking the same of anyone that's not Muslim? If not, I don't understand why my faith would have a disparate impact on my ability to achieve mission success and therefore cause you to call into question whether or not my religious preference would be a bar to performance or have any bearing on my promotion. Fortunately, somehow I was promoted. Being Jewish in the military was, for me, a little bit lonely. Meeting other Jews almost never happened. Most Jewish communities on bases are small, if they even exist at all. At Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, for example, we couldn't even muster a minyan. Sure, we had a rabbi that was a chaplain, and that was extremely rare. While I was serving, there were a grand total of 5, serving both the Navy and the Marine Corps. But the number of Jewish service members was fairly scant. Where do you turn for religious advice in the absence of a rabbi? Much of it was self-study, although you could find assistance in what is seemingly the most unlikely of places. Someone who had a profound impact on me as a Jewish service member was a Catholic priest of all people, Father Patrick Shaughnessy. I was deployed and was struggling internally with something, and one of the only places where neither the local interpreters nor other Marines would go was the chapel. In this instance, the chapel was a lonely tent that had the trappings of a generic house of worship. I could retreat there when I needed a moment, and unless Sunday worship was ongoing, I was the only one there and could think, pray, and read. On this particular day, Father Shaughnessy happened upon me, and when I was done praying, he took a look at me and somehow knew that there was something on my mind. We started discussing what was going on. First thing he asked me when we got to the root of the problem, "What's the Torah say, Jay?" I repeated the generic translation of what it was saying. He asked me if I was sure, and then he let me know he was fluent in biblical Hebrew. And he gave me the correct translation. I was off on a single word. Understanding the correct translation of that single Hebrew word radically altered my thought process and made what I was struggling with sit as well as it could with me. To say that the man had an impact is an understatement. Meals were probably the worst aspect of day-to-day life, breakfast most of all. Terrible for a culture that revolves around food, right? When we were in garrison or home, as a young Marine, you could go to the mess hall and get just about whatever you fancied. When conducting field training or overseas, however, things took a change. We had what were called T rations, which are mass-produced rations. Depending on the box that we had received, the breakfast options were scrambled eggs with ham, biscuits and sausage gravy, and scrambled eggs with bacon. Needless to say, I didn't eat breakfast very often when I was out in the field or overseas. Do you remember those same Marines that I told you about at the very beginning that were telling jokes? One of the things we had to do was post security 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in Iraq. I'd always take breakfast security and send all of the Marines to go and eat together. We had those same Marines, without me asking, brought me a couple of pieces of fruit every day. Why? Because, sir, you got to eat something, right? They never asked why I volunteered for security, but they figured it out all the same. Friday night through Saturday night, they'd always find ways to ensure I didn't end up on the watch schedule, while in return, I'd take watch during the Sunday non-denominational service or Mass. Family life was probably the most difficult piece. The constant deployments weren't good for family building. Was I under stress while deployed? Sure, but not to the extent that my wife was. My wife, Angela, is one of the most mentally resilient people that I know. Her arrival to the United States and introduction to the life of a Marine Corps officer's wife was a trial by fire. Upon arrival to the United States, around a week later, I was deployed to Iraq to cross the border in 2003. In a 6-month time span, she received one phone call via satellite phone from me that lasted for about 44 minutes. Fast forward a year to when our daughter, Nava, was born. Angela did it all on her own. I had to leave her when she was 4 months pregnant. I returned 11 months, 3 weeks, and 3 days later to a wife and then 6-month-old baby girl. Just like her mom, Nava is mentally tough. Imagine telling one of your parents or loved ones goodbye and hugging them, kissing them, and telling them how much you love them, not knowing if it would be the last time you ever see them. Now imagine doing that yearly for the first 10 years of your life. Imagine missing so many of the most important milestones, first words, first steps, first day of school, and countless other firsts. I'm grateful that God has blessed them with that toughness. Speaking of family and blessings brings me to our Torah portion for the week, Toldot. Toldot translates to generations or descendants. When I talked to Rabbi Strauss about the date and associated Torah portion, I was really hoping for next week since I already figured it out. This week is tougher. How in the heck do you relate Jacob and Esau's conflict, Isaac passing off Rebekah as his sister, or Isaac blessing his son, to Jewish life in the military? Not everything in the life I chose was bad, though. A beautiful aspect. I was able to travel extensively. I accepted assignments in Japan, Africa, and Chile. where I met my wife, thanks to the Marines. I told you, it was beautiful. Much like the Toldot of veterans seated amongst us, going back to the founding of our country, I made a choice to join the Marines at a young age. In life, each of us choose our path. To be certain, Hashem provides us with clear-cut signs. Some are subtle, some are illuminated like billboards on the freeway. When we get done, ask me how I know. But ultimately, we're charged with driving the car. Collectively, every choice that I've ever made has led to me standing in this place at this very moment in time. Life is full of difficult choices. Should I go to this school or that school? Should I ask this person to marry me? Should I accept this job and move my family to wherever? We could always take the easy way out and abstain from making choices or choose the easy path. Military service definitely isn't easy, particularly being Jewish. Esau also made choices. He was born into a holy family and home, and he likely received the same religious education as his brother Jacob. Yet he gave in to temptations and forsook his birthright for a bowl of red lentils. He chose the easy path. Sometimes the easy path is boring or leads to misfortune. As mentioned, life wasn't always terrible being in the military. Adventure was part of the fun. 2003, we were between Ad-Diwinia and Baghdad somewhere. We had been running operations and rounding up bad guys nonstop. Most of what we were doing was fairly overt, but our location wasn't widely broadcast. Just before sundown, one of the Marines came running over, frantically trying to get my attention. Here's my family-friendly recollection of the exchange. "Taylor, what's up?" "Sir, you've got like 3 minutes to have all your stuff packed. There's a helicopter coming for you." "Going where?" "Sir, nobody knows. I don't even know how they'd know where we are." So I packed in a jiffy and was off to meet up with this mysterious helicopter. I get on board. I don't recognize a soul. Okay, put the headset on. "Hey, pilot, where are we heading?" "Can't say, bub." Wonderful, I think to myself. About 20 minutes in, the Huey crew chief hollers, "Condition 1, point 'em outboard goggles on." That just means get ready for who knows what. I'm like, oh boy. So the lighting all shuts down, even the instrument lighting. I put my night vision goggles down and I saw the skyline of a fairly large city. We landed in a space that was barely big enough for the helicopter and got rapidly motioned off the aircraft by someone on the edge of the landing zone. Not knowing where I was or what we were doing, needless to say, my spidey sense was dialed up to about 11 on a scale of 1 to 10. I set security and I waited for everybody else to get off the helicopter and pass by me. I passed by our liaison who was ushering us off the aircraft and I entered into the smallish house. As my eyes adjusted to the light, I see a table with fancy place settings. At this point, I'm thinking, what? Right? I look around and I finally found a familiar face. A chaplain that I had met before we crossed the border. "Hakasher v'sameach, Jay, you sure are wound tight." I'm like, well, how would you be after receiving a really cryptic message, an unmarked helicopter with non-military pilots bringing you to an unknown location? Where are we? Celebrating Pesach, duh. I got that, but where? With a small Baghdadi Jewish community I found. So this rabbi, who I'd met about 3 months prior, davened with maybe twice, somehow remembered my name, my unit, and was able to set up a clandestine Seder in the heart of Baghdad and somehow track me down. Word to the wise, Jedi have nothing on rabbis when it comes to mind tricks. I'm sure it's a closely guarded skill passed on Lador Vador. We're all faced with choices daily, some major, some minor. The Torah provides us with a poignant lesson this week about decision-making from Esau and Jacob's story. May we always remember that we are a reflection of all of the choices that we've made up to this point, both big and small, and that we be able to discern when we're making a decision for convenience vice doing the right thing. Shabbat shalom.
So first I want to say we are very safe because Jay is head of our security committee at Congregation Beth Yeshurun. So you've guarded embassies all over the world. Now you're guarding the largest conservative synagogue in the United States. So thank you, Jay. Second, I want to welcome again your family that's here. If you guys don't mind standing, Angela, Nava, Sonia, please rise, and we thank you for your service as well. And we are honored this evening to have many, many Jewish war veterans that are here. Let's have all of you rise as well so we can salute you on this Veterans Shabbat.
And in honor of Veterans Shabbat, I want to present this magnificent song, and the words are taken directly from Lincoln's famous Gettysburg Address after the end of the Civil War, the last full measure of devotion. The last full measure of devotion, that's what they gave to the cause. The last full measure of devotion, and though they cannot hear our applause, we honor them forever and keep alive their story, pay tribute to their lives, and give them all the glory. The last full measure of devotion, beyond the call of duty were their deeds. The last full measure of devotion, they gave themselves to serve the greater need. And with those who did survive, who came back home alive, we join in praise the comrades who were slain.